on the traits, attributes, thoughts, and thought patterns of those we admire because we want to be like them. And we think that they're better, or that if we were more like them, we'd be a better person. And in actuality, each one of us is so amazingly unique that the only person that we should be like is ourselves. Because there is no one else like us. No one else like us. I am constantly amazed that we can even have conversations with each other. I really am.
Oh, I agree with you.
'Cause-
I'm laughing with you.
Yeah. I mean, when we think about our brains and a lot of what happens in our minds comes from brain chemistry. And brain chemistry is so delicate. And each one of us has a different brain chemistry, which means each one of us thinks differently and we process things differently. And yet we've figured out as a race how to communicate. I find it amazing. Because, you know, a really good example is of that, and I've read this and I've actually experienced it with my own brother, is that if you had a sibling growing up, and you ever sit down as an adult and start talking about experiences you had when you were young, and ask your sibling about a particular incident you might remember, and have them tell you their story, and then you tell them your story, you will find out they are completely different. And yet,
Sister and I have that.
yeah, you were there together, experiencing the same stimulus, the same words, the same actions, and yet you both walked away with completely different thoughts about what happened. That shows you how different we are. Even siblings who grew up in the same house, who had a lot of the same experiences, let alone someone you meet on the street that you have no history with. I find it absolutely fascinating that we can even have a conversation, like I said, which just proves to me that each one of us is completely unique in what we do, in what we are, and what we can be, if we allow ourselves to be. If we spend all our time thinking about what we should be, or who we should be like, or modifying our behaviors based on things we've been told, those are all thoughts. If we're governed by these thoughts, we leave ourselves no time to be who we are. Who we are arises out of the quiet, out of the silence of who we are inside, without the stories. You know, I mean, I hear so many people say things like, I always wanted to be an artist. Here I am, 70 years old, and I've never painted anything, and yet I've always wanted to paint. And you go, well, why don't you? Oh, I don't know how. I don't know, it's too late. It's not too late for anything. Come on. We all know people in this room that started things later in their life that they never did their entire lives. I mean, there's always time to change. The greatest change some people have in their entire being is in the moment of their death. All of a sudden, everything changes. I'm a chaplain. I've done hospice work, and I have seen people in that state before they're going to die, where all of a sudden they have this shift, and everything in their life becomes okay. Everything that they're going through at that moment becomes okay. And they're completely at peace. Not everybody gets that. That to me is that's what I hope for myself. And that's what I hope for everyone. But I've experienced it with others, and I know that it can happen. And their relatives sit around and go, what happened? They were jerks. They were this, they were that. And, all their life, they were bitter, they were unhappy, and here they are laying in the bed, and they got this smile on their face, and they're like completely at peace. What happened? And everyone, of course, wants to put a tag on it. It's, oh, this happened, oh, that happened, oh, they experienced this. Nobody knows what they experienced. All you can do is if you have the good fortune to experience that with someone else, it's life-changing, because it gives you faith and a belief that it's possible.
My daughter's a hospice nurse. She's been there for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And she said, the patient, when they're going, are peaceful. It's the relatives.
Yes.
They will save her. And they haven't seen, it's like me, I don't normally see my kids but once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want them fighting to keep me alive, so I don't allow it, that
Yeah.
type of thing. And, it's,
Yeah.
but she said, it is peaceful for most people.
We can have that now. We don't have to wait till we're dying. All it is, it sounds so simple, and yet it's so hard. All it is a choice that I'm going to change my relationship with myself. I'm going to look at myself in a non-judgmental way and wonder what it is that makes me the way I am. And in all honesty, you don't need to get a definitive answer. You only have to ask the question. Because you won't get a definitive answer. Why do I always do this? Instead of saying, I don't know, just let it have no answer. The answer will, I'm not even sure it comes to you. You change when you ask questions that you don't answer. Because something goes on another level, and you change because of it. I can't explain it. I've experienced it so much in others and myself, quite honestly, that I know that it happens. We're too quick in trying to answer the hard questions. Who am I? We want to know. We want a definitive answer. We want someone else to tell us who we are. We want an answer, darn it. And yet, I remember when I was quite young, I've always been sort of someone to question things, and I remember as a teenager being out in the middle of a field one night, snuck out of the back of the house. I was out in the field behind the high school, and I just started ranting to the universe. I want to know. I want to know what it's all about. I want to understand. I was beating my fists on the ground. No answer came. None at all.
No voice spoke.
No voice spoke. The clouds did not part. I walked away completely discouraged. But the one thing I did was I gave up on the question. It took years for me to get an answer. And that answer was not an answer I could even tell you what it was. All I know is that the reason I know it was answered because I stopped asking the question. When you stop asking a question, you get an answer. The answer is there. Even if you don't know what the answer is, it's proof positive that the question's been answered. So if you get, as you want to notice what's going on inside of you, if you see things you don't understand, or things that are uncomfortable, or you just don't, you hit those things where you just go, well, I just don't know. I don't know, and I don't care, and I don't want to ask. Don't do that. Just let it lie there, like it's lying on the table. And every time you walk by, you can see it's still lying on the table. It's an unanswered question. It's okay. We don't need answers. We, as humans, are more concerned about how than why. All science is based on how. How does this work? How did that become? They don't ask the why is it even that way in the first place, because that's a deeper question. It's like we can learn how everything works. We can dissect the universe down to the infinitesimal workings of the universe and learn how it works. But they will not tell us anything about why it's there or why it does that. the reason behind everything. If you think, you need to think about that a little bit. But we as humans have this unsatisfiable need to know how things work. Because when we finally figure, if someone says, well, you know, how does, if you were not from this century and you were to see a light bulb, you'd want to know, well, how's it work? I don't understand. And someone would say, well, you know, there's electricity, and the electricity is made over here, and it goes through this wire, and it goes into this bulb, and that causes it to luminesce. And you'd go, oh, okay, now I know how it works. But the question is, what the heck's electricity? Nobody knows what electricity is. They just know it exists. They know it's a force. They know how it works, but they don't know what it is. Just like everything else in this world. We don't know where it came from, and we don't know how. We don't know why there's electricity. We don't know why there's sunshine. We just know that all those things have to exist in order for everything to be as it is. But again, if we get away from the how do we work, you know, I am fearful because I grew up in a household that had fear in it. And my mother did such and such, and my dad did such and such. Therefore, I became a fearful child, and now as an adult, every time such and such happens, it triggers these events from my past that cause me to be the way I am. Oh, that's why I'm the way I am. It's not. It's not. The reason that you're the way you are is you've kept that story alive. Show me your childhood. Bring me your childhood right now and put it in front of me. Where is it? Where does it exist? In your thoughts. It exists nowhere else but in your thoughts. What's a thought? I don't know. Where'd it come from? I don't know. Should I believe it? I don't know. Because I don't know where it came from. It's just a thought. It comes up like bubbles in a champagne glass. It's there, but I don't know where it came from. I don't have to know where it came from. All I have to know is that if I am not a slave to my thoughts, then I'm not a slave to my emotions, and I'm not a slave to the way my body reacts to those two. I can break the cycle by simply, the easiest thing in the world is bringing my awareness and noticing that that's the way things are. That's the way oh look, I had a thought. Oh look, there's an emotion. Oh look, I have a bodily experience. Huh, how about that? Do I know why? No. Do I care? I don't need to. Why do I care? What's the point? It's disassociating yourself from this strong, strong hand-in-hand relationship we have, that we think our thoughts are so important. We think the emotions we have validity, and that they're born of reality. How many times have you been fearful over something that wasn't really the way it was? How many times have you been unhappy just to find out that the other person that you thought did something to you didn't even think they were doing that? You totally misinterpreted it. You built a story. Our thoughts are just thoughts, and they change moment to moment. They're fleeting, they're fluttering, they don't mean a thing. We can play with them, we can use them, we can build them up like bricks on top of bricks to build a story if we want, if it suits our purpose. But we are not controlled by our thoughts. You may think you are, but you're not. You decide to be controlled by your thoughts, and that in itself is a thought. And I'm going to leave it at that tonight.
Gee, thanks.
Thank you all for being here.